Hey, what's up everyone? My name's Wes. We're talking freaks and like the freaks that come out at night in today's video. But before we get into it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Let's go. So, I was gonna make a video about the Dampir and comparing the Van Richter's one to the one in Astarion's Book of Hungers to the one in Grim Hollow. And then I saw this, which is part of the background image for the vampire devotee. And I'm like, is Watsy going like a little bit adult on us? Because, well, if you think about this picture and what it implies, and also like maybe some of the scenes in Baldur's Gate 3, Act 3 especially, or like with the Cambion or the twins, I'm not going to say anything more than that, because in case you're still playing or whatnot, that I'm like, I mean, this image also made me think of like all the RPG horror stories you hear about Vampire the Masquerade, and it's because how vampires are portrayed in media as being so like seductive and whatnot. But you can also just not include that. Same thing with like Vampires Turning the Mist. This past weekend or past week, I crit a vampire with my paladin, spiting on it, doing like over 100 points of damage, and then it turned to mist and floated away, which means we'd have to go track it down and then kill it in its coffin and I'm like, that is such a bore and a bummer, and really just is not a feel good moment. Like turning a vampire to mist, as opposed to if it just turned to dust, that would have been way cooler in my opinion and more satisfying. But we're not talking about vampires turning to mist, we're talking about vampires in seduction, right? Obviously this is like session 0 stuff, how much explicit we're going into scenes. Like the dungeon dude would say, if you don't see it in a Marvel movie, you don't see it at our table, and I'll agree with a lot of that. But you also have to think, Deadpool's a Marvel movie. Disney owns Marvel now and Fox, and if you watch the second X-Men movie where Mystique tries to slip into Wolverine's tent, there's that. And so, especially like newer players who've never played, or old farts who are like stuck in their ways, very creepy is the word I want to say. And I bet we're gonna get some comments from those kind of people to watch, saying like, "Oh, you're just too conservative." I'm like, no, I just know there's a time and a place. Like, I'm all about playing advanced kinks and cantrips in a bisexual polycule, or something like Thirsty Sword Lesbians with the right partners. I think that would be the sweet spot right there. I just don't like making other people feel uncomfortable, right? Because despite having a session 0, there was a moment in my Curse of Strahd game that came up that I never thought would come up, that I spoke out about and even crashed out, because like, I don't like the term survivor, but I was SA'd when I was a kid, so it was just very triggering, that one scene in my game. And after that we're like, yeah, vampire seduction, can we keep that out? Or like to a degree keep it out? I mean, IRO, I'd be all about it. However, in game, that's a different story, because I'm playing a character, right? Or I'm playing my character who's not conservative either. However, it was just a very uncomfortable scene. And Astarion in BG3 does not help with the seductive vampires. And I was trying to think of the last vampire movie I saw, which actually didn't have seductive vampires. It was it opens at the Flugen house, but a lot of it takes place in the air. The one with the vampire Muto in the sun, it's the Dosham film. So we have, those vampires were, dangerous. They weren't seductive at all. They were like, creatures of the night and monsters. And that's how I prefer my vampires. And, they could have their heads torn off and die, their hearts ripped out and die, or just burn up in the sun, They didn't turn to mist. They were just monsters. And I think that's how you should play them in game. Actually, no, you can play them however you want in game. I actually hate the fact that I did this in my game, which was I had vampire turn to mist, but their coffin was like 5 feet away. Actually, the players woke them up in their coffins, so when they killed them, they was right there. That's only because I was like trying to buy time. The combat encounter went quicker than I expected, so I'm just like, yeah, I just need a few more minutes out of this. However, like I said, seductive vampires is a trope that can die. Vampires turning to mist is a trope that can die. Even the whole stake through the heart, I mean, it's literally one of the big things in Grim Hollow, like especially with the vampire transformations. However, that's a trope that can die. I was gonna talk about the Dampir and whatnot, but honestly, they barely changed anything. You lost the ability to not breathe, and you gained resistance to necrotic damage. You also lost 2 proficiencies. That's all the difference. Slight nerf. But I guess the side grade, you lost 2 proficiencies and the ability to just not have to breathe, and gained necrotic resistance. Which, actually, I think that is a nerf overall. The slight buff would be your bite now works off a con instead of strength. Yeah, neither here or there. It only did 1d4 anyway. You weren't really biting people. And that's about it for the changes on the Dampir. The Grim Hollow one doesn't have as fast as walking speed. It's 30 feet instead of 35. However, it's got spells. It has friends and charm person, where the WotC one doesn't, and that's really like about it. Oh, and you have proficiency in deception, I think, or persuasion. I forget which one. But yeah, that's it on like the changes and the differences between them. Really, they both have spider climb. They both have dark vision. Yeah, and I think that's it for this video. So let me know how you feel about like what you think when you think vampires. Do you think creatures of the night, or are you like, do you fall into the media tropes as well? Because like sometimes you see vampires who are like, oh, that doesn't actually work, when they're talking about like crosses and holy water and stuff, crossing rivers, stuff like that. And then you see sometimes seductive vampires, and sometimes you just see vampires as monsters. And where you think like Wizards of the Coast is going with this. I mean, there's nothing really explicit about this scene. However, they're also not denying what the possibilities of the scene are either. So thank you all for joining me. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I've been West Where's the Fun, and bye.